This episode sponsored by Sawyer Products. Sawyer is a cool company that provides not just great products like water filtration systems, first aid kits, insect repellent, and sunscreen. They also are giving clean drinking water to people around the world. Every time you buy a water filter, be it the small one for your water bottle or the one you hook onto a garden hose, you and Sawyer are helping a developing country with good, clean water systems. Their insect repellent is astonishing. They even have some you spray on your clothes or your pets to keep those nasty, creepy crawlies away. The sunscreen works so well you only have to apply it a few times a day versus every 50 minutes with the other guy's stuff. It's truly amazing. So go get some Sawyer products that not only work great, but also give back to the communities around the world. Check them out at Sawyer.com and tell them you heard it at Eastmans. This episode is sponsored by Fold AR. Have you ever wanted to carry a little more firepower than just a pistol? In the current trying times, it'd be nice to have an AR that fits in a backpack the size of a briefcase. Fold AR has solved that problem for you. They come in a few different versions, fold-in half rifles, fold-in thirds, and even an AR pistol. Don't worry about finding the perfect backpack to fit them in. They come in a backpack specifically built just for them and looks like a small backpack. Fold ARs don't just fold up and conceal easily, but they are very safe and will hold their own at the range. Fold AR is the perfect combination of concealment and firepower. Hey folks, welcome to Eastmans Podcast. Today I am talking to one of my, the right-hand man here, the guy that does it all. If you've seen things, done things, heard things, or listened to things, Brandon's probably touched it, hopefully appropriately.
Hopefully.
I got Brandon Mason, who is here with Eastmans, and Brandon, I'm going to kind of let you walk us through what you want the audience to know about you. Who is Brandon, all the way from childhood to current day?
Oh, boy. It's going to be a short podcast.
No, I get you talking about North Dakota, and we'll be here an hour and a half.
No, growing up in the outdoors and very thankful to have a family that was big into hunting and obviously Dad took us out and my mom was a part of that and brother and sister and all that. I've been a mule deer fanatic my whole life. Grew up hunting Badlands mule deer in western North Dakota. I was very fortunate to hunt a cool area. The deer numbers were high at the time. And
what is the Badlands? I've heard the Badlands. I've actually, North Dakota is one of the states I've never been in. One of the few states I've never been in. I've been really close. I could see the border. So what is the Badlands in North Dakota? What does it look like?
I mean, there's Badlands, things that are called Badlands all across the West. North Dakota, South Dakota, all the way down. That's kind of, they call it the gateway to the West. So that's where rough country starts, more arid climates and less humidity, and mule deer and sage grouse and antelope and all those core Western species. You start to see them at that point. And in the Badlands, I'm obviously partial because that's where I'm from, but I've been to various types of Badlands around the country, and in my opinion, nothing rivals the North Dakota Badlands. It's just a very special place. They're carved out by the Little Missouri River that eventually flows into the Missouri, and
so they're bluffs and
bluffs,
big,
rough country,
draws.
Draws.
Where you're at, what you call them.
A very bentonite based soils, clay type soils. There's a lot of, I don't know about other places that are called Badlands, but in North Dakota, there's a lot of natural springs. So there's very little need from a wildlife standpoint for water development projects.
It's like the edge of the grasslands, right?
Yep.
It's where the grasslands turns into the high desert type stuff.
Yep. And it's beautiful country, lots of wildlife, at least historically. And it's also the home of some of the biggest oil booms that we've seen in recent history. Everybody heard about the Bakken.
Right. That's right in the square in the Badlands.
That is the heart of it right there. And in fact, my dad worked in the 1980s oil boom in that part of the country, and we lived in northwest North Dakota at the time, in Williston, which a lot of people have heard about. And I was born in southwest North Dakota, and so I've covered both ends of the Badlands and everything in between. I still go back there every year to hunt and spend time with my dad and my son now, who's part of that. And
how old's your son?
He's 17, and he's been literally coming out there since he could walk with me. And mule deer's just in our blood. I love hunting elk. I love hunting antelope and bird hunting and all that stuff. I love doing just being outdoors. But I always ask people, if you had one species to hunt for the rest of your life and you couldn't hunt anything else, what would you hunt? And some people, I don't know, it could be this.
There's sheep guys and bear guys.
And I'm just a mule deer nut. That's what drove me to pick my career choice in wildlife biology. I worked for the Mule Deer Foundation for a while, volunteered for a long time for them. And of course, working here, Eastman family is synonymous with mule deer. And when I first how I discovered the Eastmans was because they were the only people at the time that had, or your family was the only people at the time that had mule deer only videos. Nothing existed like that.
That's
before
back
then.
Grandpa Gordon era. Gordon and my Uncle Rada, who actually had a series called Extreme Bucks.
Yep, and those are the ones that got me hooked. Yep. Morty and all those legendary.
Used to advertise them on ESPN when ESPN was brand new.
That's
brand new.
I ran.
That don't know that there was a time when there was no ESPN. It was in the 80s.
It's hard to believe. But yeah, I saw some of those videos in a video rental store, VHS tapes back in the day when you could do that. And it was somebody else that shared the passion that my dad and I had for mule deer was the Eastman family. Yep. And I thought, I felt like I discovered gold. I couldn't believe it.
So you grew up in the Badlands. Your dad worked in the oil field. Did he retire? Is he retired? Is he still working in the oil field?
No, when the 80s oil boom busted, he chose to go back to college to finish his degree, and he ended up becoming an accountant. So went from oil field roughneck to working in an office all day, which was a big switch for him, of course. And then he retired from that job here a few years ago, and he's full retired now. But. So
you grew up as so walk me through how do you go from an oil field family to college? So you have a degree in biology. You said
Correct,
that,
yep.
And you worked in that field.
Yep, for almost a decade, I worked as seasonal employment and then full-time employment as a wildlife technician and then a private lands biologist for the North Dakota Game and Fish Department. And during that time, before that even, I had started a chapter of the Mule Deer Foundation when I was in college, first one in the state of North Dakota. We started in Bismarck. And
you had nothing else to do besides, get basically a medical degree. It's wildlife biology. You're a couple classes short of pre-med, and you decide, you know what, I just don't have enough to do. I'm going to start a mule deer bank, or I'm a mule deer. I guess was it a region then, or was it just one chapter?
It was just one chapter, but the nearest regional director at that time was a name Ed Perotti. He used to help your family film, and he was based out of Thermopolis,
where I grew up,
right south of where we're at right now. And he came up to Bismarck and helped us get a chapter off the ground. And then, because of the distance that he was away from there and, the cost of travel and everything. And then even after he resigned, we didn't have an RD within 2 states of us, a regional director. And so I kind of functioned, just because I was passionate about it, as a volunteer regional director, sort of, for the whole state. And I've introduced a couple of bills in the legislature for mule deer purposes as a volunteer, and was very active and helped start other chapters, and then eventually was offered a job as a regional director for the Mule Deer Foundation and the government liaison with the CEO at the time, Miles Moretti. And so he and I would go to all the international wildlife meetings on behalf of the Mule Deer Foundation. And then when I wasn't doing that, I was traveling around 4 states, fundraising, lining up projects, and just swimming in that sea every day.
So does that, I know you've been here at Eastmans for 12 years, 13 years, something like that. So does that region still exist? Are they still strong and rolling? And
Yep, still stronger than it's ever been, actually. And with the growth of the Mule Deer Foundation, they've been able to add employees to shrink that region a bit, because it burns a person out. I mean, it's a passion-based job, but eventually even that passion and you're working for a nonprofit, so you're not making a bunch of money.
Right.
And so you can't justify staying there from that standpoint. And so for a while, it's just the passion and the drive to just help the resource and sportsmen and everything. And then if you're, at the time I was raising a young family too. So I was gone all the time, and it was a struggle. It was hard. And I stayed on as long as I did because of that passion. But then after a while, you need some breathing room, and you just can't keep up that pace.
Well, so how did the Bakken, the oil boom, the second, fourth, whatever one they're on now, how did that affect a mule deer? And was it very key that you started that banquet or those areas at the right time? And has it been beneficial for everybody?
Yeah, I think it was good that the Mule Deer Foundation, because of a lot of dedicated volunteers up there, there was a good presence there before the Bakken oil boom began. And, Mule Deer Foundation would say this. I would say this personally. We say this here at Eastmans all the time. We're not, we're passionate about mule deer conservation. We're not anti-energy development. We know that we need it, and it can be done in sustainable ways, long-term ways, and have as much of a minimal impact on the land and the wildlife resources as possible. But even with that being said, a boom is what it is. It's a boom. There's a lot of activity, and initially it has some effects on wildlife populations because there's more human traffic than an area has maybe ever seen.
Right.
But the good thing about a boom is over time, so that boom lasts for a short time, partially political reasons and world events and all that, and oil prices. But also the development, there's only so much development that needs to be done. And then after that, it's sustainability.
The big impact is the actual building of the infrastructure. Right. Once that's done, then it's just maintaining.
Right. Then it's maintaining. There's a lot less traffic out there, generally speaking. And mule deer, they don't do well with that tons of big influx of disturbance, but they learn to adapt, and we've seen, I was on the winter range last year, videoing here in Wyoming, and there's very healthy, very solid mule deer populations that were hanging around oil pads.
Big, huge infrastructure.
Yeah, infrastructure. And it wasn't like they avoided those footprints.
Right.
And so sometimes I think only half of the story gets told with the impact that energy development has on the land, and not the whole story that, it's the big bad oil development that's coming and it scares everybody. And there's some concerns obviously with it, but it's not the evil empire against all odds that wildlife's going to be decimated.
Yeah. One of the things, interesting that you bring that up, one of the things that we learned on that we did a sage grouse film that you were part of, and it talked about, sage grouse is basically the canary of the prairies, and what affects, if the sage grouse are being affected, there's a problem with if it habitat or infrastructure or whatever predators. One of the interesting things that I learned through that, and they actually developed this in the Bakken. What they used to do in the 80s, they would just punch holes the closest to wherever the oil reserve was, and so there would be thousands of these well pads all over the prairie. And what they did in the Bakken, partially because of the environmental side of things, and they learned that if they can make the smaller the footprint, the better on the surface. Plus, there's always money involved. If they can put, instead of one pad every 6 miles or whatever, they can put 16 pads on, or 16 wells on one pad and drill underneath. They don't have to pay as much surface damages, right?
Right.
It's all money. But it also helped with the trafficking and allowing areas for the wildlife that aren't as disturbed. So they had pockets that they could, escape the crazy. So,
yeah, it's a lot different than you see a lot of the older oil fields just right around here where we live in northern Wyoming.
They were built in the 70s.
And there's a well every 100 feet. I mean, they're pumping like crazy. Whereas, like you said, you could put so many on one pad now that the disturbance is just far less than it used to be.
Well, and the technology, they can do directional drilling now that back then they couldn't. I mean, they can drill they can put a drill head within a window of a car 8,000 feet away. It's crazy.
It's amazing.
Absolutely amazing. But okay, so North Dakota Game and Fish, Mule Deer Foundation. What's the bridge from Mule Deer Foundation to Eastmans? How did that happen?
Well, as you know, I was working, I'd started my own fencing business, meaning agricultural fencing for ranchers. And I was doing that part-time because the wildlife arena doesn't pay very well. And so a friend of mine and I started a fencing company for the weekend work.
And
so
you were supplementing your income
Yep.
so that you could you work that passion.
Exactly. And then over time, Mule Deer Foundation was growing, and I was, gone too much from home. And then the fencing business was growing exponentially. And so I just came to a crossroads where I had to choose one or the other. And because the fencing business would keep me closer to home, and we had a young family at the time, I chose that and resigned from the Mule Deer Foundation. And then through a wildlife-related issue that I was still volunteering for and helping with in North Dakota, I remember I called you and asked for Eastman's support on that thing, and that led to another discussion of, well, what are you doing now? I heard you quit Mule Deer Foundation.
I had met you because you came down here and helped one of my past employees, Matt, who actually used to do your job.
Yep.
He went on to the Sheep Foundation, but he started or helped grow the Mule Deer the chapter here, and so you were the RD back then, and you'd been in our office a couple times.
Yep, and so you and
begging
I
for
met.
things.
Yeah, can you please donate to our banquet? And so that led
That's
to.
when I knew you were good at it.
Yeah, this guy's gonna sell advertising, and so I called you about that letter of support for what we were doing up there, and that led to the discussion of what I was doing for a living now, and I was doing a little preaching in our church. I mean, it was stuff that it was like fencing and preaching. Never planned on that, but that's what I was doing at the time.
I need a preacher when I fence. There's a lot of cussing going on.
Yeah, exactly. Keep my temper down. And so then Matt had moved on, and the job was open here, and here we are.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was very serendipitous how that whole thing happened.
Yep.
So, all right. So you're here. What do you do? What do you do at Eastmans? That I know what you do, but there's a lot of people that see you on camera as hunting, and there's a lot of misconceptions that all we do is hunt 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and talk on podcasts and hunt on camera and go home and that's it. That's what we do. But as you know, that's not true. What do you do here every day?
So what I do is I work on building partnerships and relationships, and so on the surface, the simple thing to say is I'm selling advertising, which, I mean, that's not untrue. That's what I do, but it's much
the end result.
Right. That's the end result. But the bigger thing is at Eastman's, we want to connect the most passionate audience, which in our opinion is our audience, and with the best product manufacturers on the planet and mostly in the country, and connect those two so that the most passionate audience has the best gear to use in the field, and the best gear companies get to talk to the most passionate hunters on the planet. And I really believe I couldn't do this if I didn't believe this, that's true. That's what we do, and that's the types of companies we work with, which are top tier, and there's always new ones coming up each and every day. And then the audience that Eastman's has, print subscribers, TV audience, online viewers, podcast listeners, e-news subscribers, social media followers, on and on and on, live events attendees, the passion that I've always considered myself a pretty passionate Western hunter until I worked here. And I thought, wow, I'm kind of just a glorified weekend warrior compared to the people that follow what we do. I mean, we have a passionate audience, and it's fun to connect the dots. I think that's the best thing about our jobs, the thing that it's fun that we get to hunt on camera, and it's fun we get to do podcasts, and it's fun that we get to, I'm going to go hopefully film mule deer in the winter range here in a couple of weeks, and go to trade shows and meet people all over and travel, and it's all cool. But I love success stories from brands that get connected with our audience and their brands explode in growth. I love that.
I would add too, I love hearing hunting stories, success stories. Yeah, hey man, I read this article in your magazine, or I listened to Brian Barty's podcast, or I watched this on Beyond the Grid, and I took this tip, and I was successful in drawing a tag, and look at this animal I took up there. That's why we do this. I mean, I've been sitting here in this organization literally my entire life. The company was started when I was 10, And I've been to hundreds. I've talked to hundreds. I've talked to tens of thousands of hunters. And those stories are, that's why I get up every morning, is because it's helping hunters become successful hunters.
I just recently received a text message from a mutual friend connection in North Dakota that I helped with, kind of guiding him on which unit to apply for, with the points that he had and everything for elk. And him and his buddies had a tremendous hunt, and he just texted me success photos the other day. They had
cool.
Just an epic fall and elk on the backpacks and packing them out. So yeah,
that's really what it's about. And like you said, in connecting those guys with brands that we have, the Matthews, top tier Matthews and Savage and 6 Hour and Hornet. You go down the list of our brands that we work with every single day. They make sense, and we vet them. Honestly, we vet. There's been products that have come through your office, and we've had a conversation. Yeah, that just doesn't fit our brand. I'm sorry. I'm sure it's going to work here or there or whatever, but it doesn't fit. Our typical audience is not going to use that, or won't believe in that, or there's an ethical issue or whatever.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. I was just the other day, I got an email from somebody who's watching our YouTube channel, and they were mad about an ad on there. Of course, we don't run the ads on YouTube. Google does. And they were mad like we did it. I don't need my kids watching, I think it was male enhancement or something, watching that stuff. And of course I had to write back, listen, we don't do that. That's Google. And apparently they found the audience, our audience has been clicking on that enough that they keep feeding it to people. So it's crazy. I tell everybody that you are the grease that moves everything here. And you're the executive vice president and make most of the decisions. Even when I'm in the office, you're making more than I am every single day. And it's fun to watch. Now, I will tell you, and you'll have two of these, I'm sure. Brandon is the head of bad jokes and movie quotes.
No, dad jokes, not bad jokes.
I'm sorry. Are they different? Some of the ladies in the office just roll their eyes when Brandon starts talking, because it's going to be either a movie quote from Billy Madison or some crazy Jim Carrey or Will Ferrell, or it's going to be a bad dad joke.
Yep. For some reason, my brain can remember almost every movie line that I've ever seen. I can't remember what it costs to run a full-page ad in our magazine that I sell every day, but worthless information that I'm the king of. Yeah, I remember that, and bad jokes.
All right, give us two dad jokes.
Oh, I got to think of some of my favorites here, and I've got a library, as you can imagine.
So movie quotes. It took Brandon and I travel together a lot, and it took me about 3.5 minutes to realize that 90% of the stuff Brandon says is a movie quote. And I don't even know it. I'll be watching a movie and go, oh, that's where Brandon got that.
My kids do the same thing. Like, wait, you say that all the time. I'm like, well, there's all this free information out there. Why would I try to think hard to make up some of my own stuff?
And reinvent the wheel. It's already round.
Yeah. Man, my favorite
Well,
jokes?
be thinking about it. Think about it. So here you sell advertising. You do hunt a lot. Now, you do handicap yourself constantly. For those of you who don't know, that haven't been paying attention on, and now I'm going to say this, and you're going to see it every single time you watch Brandon hunt. He handicaps himself with weapons. I don't know why, but he does. He shoots a compound bow without sights. I don't know why you would do that.
With sights, I feel like I told my wife once, remember the first year that I was here, because I shot a recurve exclusively for a dozen years or something. And then before that, I learned to shoot a compound without sights when I was in high school. And then starting here, we get to work with really good bow companies. And so I get to shoot the newest bow of the year. And I thought, well, I'm going to embrace the whole thing. I'm going to get sights. I'm going to get stabilizer. I'm going to get everything on there. And I did it for one field season, and I told my wife I felt like I was a dog with a muzzle on it. I like how efficient, the new sights are. You got, Spot Hog and Black Gold and many other good companies that the precision engineering in these products is dumbfounding, quite honestly. It's amazing.
To be able to take it off and put it back on and it's still in sight. It's crazy for me.
Yeah, and it does. I mean, you and I did that where we didn't want to pack 2 bows into the backcountry on a backpack hunt. And so I sighted in my bow with, it was a spot hog sight at the time.
Yep.
And so that you could shoot it out to 60 yards, and I had it dialed in like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I took it as an experiment. I took it off and then put it right back on, and it was shooting the exact same places. Yep. It was amazing. And then that way we could pack the sight with us, and then if I tagged out shooting instinctively, then you could shoot it with sights.
You could pack my training wheels.
Exactly. And no, with the no sight thing, a lot of people are dumbfounded by it, but quite honestly, there's not much to it. I mean, if you can shoot a recurve, which obviously 99% of recurves don't have sights on them, shooting a modern compound that shoots flat and is fast, and you don't really have to change your point of aim much out to 40 yards, and even after that, not much out to 60. It's not hard. I mean, once you have your zero in, and your biggest thing is, I found that if I close, because I've been doing this since, I'm 46 now. I just turned 46, and I've been shooting a bow religiously since I was 16. And so that's a lot of years of flinging arrows. And I know from that much shooting, I mean, when I was in high school, I'd be down at the range 5 out of 7 days of the week. I mean, I couldn't get enough of it.
You were obsessed.
100% obsessed. And so I know that, well, like, if I close my eyes and just pull a bow back, no matter what the bow is, and just naturally anchor in, that's 30 yards and under with a modern compound bow. Wow. I don't have to think. And then after that, I have to make minor adjustments. But when you shoot the bow enough, there's not much thinking. And I've found one thing that's really weird about instinctive shooting. Well, it's instinctive. You're not supposed to think.
Right.
And the more I think,
it's like throwing a baseball.
Yes, the more I think, the more I miss. And when I pre-range distances, say around a water hole waiting for antelope, I guarantee you I will miss. I know. I've got proof. I've done it.
So do you not use a rangefinder?
I quit using a rangefinder on all my bow hunts now.
Do you really?
I pull back, and I just know if I can hit it or not. Usually if I range it, I think too much and I'll miss.
Wow.
I'll either shoot over them or under them. And some of the shots, like I shot an antelope here in an oil field, ironically, that we were just talking about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, that if I would have known the range, I wouldn't have shot. But I pulled back, I shot, and I ranged it afterwards because I was just curious. We had a rangefinder in the vehicle, and it was 56 yards, and I hit it right through the heart, and we watched him die within sight. But
so you are killing stuff out to 60. It's not, you didn't hammer string yourself at 40 like you would with a recurve.
But if I know it's 60, and I'm not really that good about judging yardages, honestly, without a rangefinder, but if I know it's 60, I'll miss. That's a guarantee.
So you're not consciously going, okay, it's 60, I got to readjust.
No,
you're going, he's small enough in my sight picture that I have to adjust a little bit.
Yeah, I pull back. And it was the same thing when I grew up playing a lot of sports, and the sport I was most passionate about and that I was probably the best at of all the ones I played was basketball. And my high school coach, recognized that if I waited till my feet were set, nobody was around, and only shot when I was wide open, I'd miss every time. But if I caught the ball and shot, kind of like what you see Steph Curry doing now, he doesn't think, he just shoots. And I was a pretty high percentage shooter once he noticed that.
Jeez.
I don't know. It's just something in my brain. And I've noticed that my son is the same way. If he thinks, he will miss. Guaranteed.
Not thinkers. Not a lot going on up there.
Not a lot going on. No, pretty open.
Speaking of which, not a lot going on. You also use a 30-06.
What do you mean not a lot going on?
If you're really into slow-moving vehicles.
Speaking of vehicles.
Well, that's next on my list.
No, 30-06. The reason why I've stuck to the 06 for so long, it's not because I think it's a superior cartridge from a ballistic standpoint, obviously, because it's not. Please. But I don't
have that argument now.
I don't shoot long range, and in my definition, everybody's definition of long range is different.
Right.
You talk to a guy who lives in dense forest, 200 yards long range. For me, long range is anything over 500, and I would never, just me personally, I would never shoot at an animal past that anyway. And so for a lot of reasons, which is a whole nother topic, but So the .6 500 and under, I'm kind of like instinctive shooting. I've shot it since I was probably about 16, and I know what it can do. I know the capabilities, and now we have really nice scopes and everything on them that you can really dial things in. But even if I don't have that, say on my old personal, 2x4 with a barrel on it, with a straight 6-power scope,
Sniper rifle.
I just know where I need to hold. People make fun of it, call it Kentucky windage, but when you've been doing it for a very long time, over and over and over again, I know where I need to shoot. I mean, I've killed, before I started doing much on TV here, I killed a bull elk at 475 yards with a straight 6-power scope. I knew right where to hold. You just get used to it. You know your equipment. So, but the biggest thing with the .6, why I've stuck with it, and I'm branching out a little bit now with, the 6.5 PRC.
I had to convince you to go to Savage plant and build a gun. And they asked what caliber, and I said it will not be a 30-06.
Anything but that.
Anything but that. So now you got a 300 PRC.
6.5 PRC.
Or 6.5. Yep.
Oh, and that's I've had a lot of fun shooting that. That's a screamer of a cartridge.
Yep.
But the 30-06, back to that, is, at least for the bulk of my life, it just has such a wide variety of bullet choices that I can shoot everything from coyotes to moose with it, and I have.
And you can buy them anywhere.
And so that's why I've been loyal to it. I mean, we make a lot of jokes about it here, like I'm deathly loyal to the 30-06. I'm deathly loyal to functionality.
What'd you call it? Old meat in the pot?
Yeah, old meat in the pot. There's a guy at the range here locally that we were jabbing each other. He goes, "Don't you let anybody tease you about that old .6." My mom used to say that whenever my dad was going out with the .6, we had meat in the pot. So she called his rifle "old meat in the pot."
So it's nostalgia. It has got a bit of a nostalgia. So also nostalgically, your newest vehicle is what, a 68?
Yeah, not the newest. Well, actually, the lowest mileage vehicle I own is a 1968 Suburban with 37,000 miles on it.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Eberly Stock. Eberly Stock is one of my favorite backpacks. Now, I've been wearing their backpack for almost 20 years. They have lightweight backpacks. They have modular backpacks, everything from their main frame, which is just a frame pack that you can put bags on. They have these cool outside called bat wings that you can use. So check them out at eberlystock.com and make sure you tell them Ike sent you. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Silencer Central. Silencer Central, thank you for supporting us. If you would like to support Silencer Central, if you have any interest in a silencer, which I encourage because it is a game changer in the field, check out silencercentral.com. They will walk you through the paperwork online, as well as they can ship that silencer directly to your doorstep. So check them out and tell them Ike sent you. Oh my gosh. And so what else do you have? If that's the lowest miles do you have? What's the highest miles?
I've got a 1990 daily driver square body that's got 198,000 miles. 198,000. It's just about to hit 198. And then, but that's not, the transmission is original. You're not road tripping that though. Oh yeah, that's my daily driver. That's my vehicle, man. Oh, and then our family Suburban, our newest year vehicle, which now is getting pretty old too, is a 2009 Suburban. Just barely broken.
It's barely broken. It's only on a second set of tires.
That's right. Second engine, second set of tires.
So if the audience hasn't figured this out, you really are nostalgic about traditional hunting, about traditional weapons, traditional vehicles. You're an old soul. Yeah, 46 is young.
Yeah, it's not like I set out to be that way intentionally. It's not like I'm like, oh, this is gonna be my shtick.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. I've always been hardwired that way. I like things that, the biggest thing, like I've explained to you, part of the reason why I don't do social media personally is not because I'm anti-social media. It's because it doesn't solve a problem in my life.
Yeah.
And if something doesn't solve a problem in my life, that means it's causing more work in my life. And I don't have enough time for something else to cause more work in my life. And so anything that's a time suck or a financial suck or whatever, I do not do it. And so the old vehicles I like because they're simple. Yeah, they're not as comfortable. And, the 68 Suburban I drove home 2 days ago in below zero weather, I felt like I was on an old snowmobile or something. It was cold all the way home. But
testing the cryptic gear on the way home.
Yeah, exactly, for real. And you got to bundle up just for driving. But I like it because there's not much that can go wrong with it. And the new vehicles, I don't like the bells and whistles because they cause more headache in the long run, because I keep vehicles for a long time.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm trading often, I mean, it's kind of cool. I like the tech in them from a engineering standpoint. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
Like what they've figured out vehicles can do. It's pretty marvelous. But functionality wise, I don't like it personally.
That's kind of, so get back to time. You don't have time to, social media or whatever, which audience, you're not going to find him on Facebook or Instagram or Snap-a-Doodle or
not unless
TikTok.
It's on Eastman's post.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, you do post on there as Eastman's, but timing here. Let's talk about why you don't have time to do that. So you and your wife made a conscious decision. Now this is conscious to have 4 children.
Right.
And not only are they 4, but they're stacked.
About 18 months apart.
Yeah,
roughly.
you have 4 Irish twins, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, I guess your youngest is 2 years or something. But so 4 years, which that's crazy, especially when you moved here and your oldest was 5, and so you raised your children here in Powell. But you also decided, you know what, that darn old school system, that's just not going to work for us.
Yeah, I'm a very passionate Bible believing Christian, and I know not everybody is, but that's my thing, and I take a lot of it pretty literally, and because of that, that helps me make choices that are different than maybe what the average person would do, and also I'm a student of history as well, and it's concerning to me the direction that this country, even before 2020, the last 20 years has been very concerning to me. And we decided, not overnight, it was a very intentional decision of many years of talking about it, that we decided we helped start a Christian school here in our little town, and then our kids kind of outgrew that because it wasn't set up for high school and stuff at the time, and is now, but not at the time. But and so we decided to homeschool, which is funny because anybody that knows me 15, 20 years ago, I was a rabid anti-homeschool person. I didn't think it was right. I thought the kids would get behind in their social skills, all the stereotypes. And then I started paying attention to some people I knew that had kids that were homeschooled. They were just phenomenal kids. It's more of a reflection of the parents than the school system, because obviously there's people that are half a bubble off in the public schools and in private schools and homeschools, and then there's cool people in each one too. Yep. It's just people being people. Yep. And so we made a decision that we can be the type of family where people go, oh my word, they're homeschooled, or holy cow, they're homeschooled. So
What isn't it? It's become a joke in your family, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, we joke about it because I mean, we get flack a lot, because people go, "Aren't you concerned about your kids or their education or their social skills or this and that?" And it used to make me mad, but now we just play right into the jokes. I don't care. I mean, our kids they're just so successful in what they're doing. It blows my mind, even more so than what we had even envisioned for them at this age, and we love our little family and we get along great with people and we're involved in the community, and our kids, as play music and are playing on the radio and recitals and this and that. I'm like, I'm quite fine with poking fun at ourselves.
It is funny though. Hunter's your boy hangs around here a lot and, films for us and goes on hunts with us, and every time he messes up, he's like, "Oh man, I'm sorry, I'm homeschooled."
Yeah, he blames it on everything, to the point where it's like you're kind of taking it a little far here. But
that's what high school kids do, though, on everything.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So I have a question. Back to the industry and the state, hunting industry as a whole. You've been in it for 13 years. You've been in it longer than that, but really entrenched in the manufacturing side of it, and instead of being in the audience, you're communicating to the audience. Mm-hmm. What do you think? Where do you think our industry is sitting? Good, bad? What's the good stuff? What's the bad stuff? What's the the things that the consumer needs to be looking out for and watching.
So I'll start with the bad because it's always nice to end with the good.
Yeah.
So the concerning things to me, and this is getting less of a concern now than it was, say, 5 years ago. The people who largely built the hunting industry, people in Mike's, your dad's age group, for lack of better terms, a lot of them are the baby boomer generation, right? They took hunting, and there is some hunting things out there, but they've made it pretty close to what it is today.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't have social media and all that, but I mean, as far as a legit industry.
Right.
And they were pretty protective of that, which I don't blame them. And like we've talked, they didn't allow a lot of guys in our age group in easily. They had to fight tooth and nail, right? For
oh my gosh,
any credibility, any respect, any position, anything.
There's actually a generation that is gone out of the hunting industry. The Ike Eastmans and the Guy Eastmans and the Jason Hornadys, and there's a whole generation that doesn't exist. It goes from 60 to 30.
Yep.
That the 40, 50-year-olds don't exist in this industry very often.
Yeah, we're kind of like unicorns, really. We're very statistically rare in our age group, and so now almost overnight we've become the old guys, the old vanguard. And which is weird for us because I still feel like I got to fight for everything. And but in a few,
you drive old Suburbs and shoots 30-06s and bows without sights,
maybe that's true. That's why the winds are so good, is because they're so hard. But a handful of years ago, so because of that, a lot of that age group retired, right, or passed away or whatever, and so we had this huge influx almost overnight of people fresh out of college or in their mid to late 20s or whatever coming into the industry, which on the surface seems good because new blood and new kicking new life into the industry and it's going to sustain itself. But at the time, I was very concerned. We were very concerned that there was a definite unappreciated view of the historical point of this industry. Which like the saying goes, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Yep.
And so there was no appreciation for the traditions and the histories and what made the industry what it is today. And we were very concerned about that. So that's the challenge and the negativity, I think, around it. And some of the stuff on social media is concerning. I'm not against social media. I think I'm going to get to the positive side of that here in a second. But some people use it, of course, like anything in life, they use it for the wrong purpose. And it paints, I think, us as hunters in a bad light a lot of times. And I despise it. And some of it, meaning people who are, the old term we would have used would be posers.
Right.
And they're just trying to get clicks and they're in likes and
did I just do that
impressions.
For the gram?
Yeah, that joke from our friend Ryan Lampers. He said, "Did I just do that for the gram?" It's become a big joke around here, but it's funny. But there's a lot of people that do it for the wrong reasons, and we are seeing this trend in our industry, which is partially still there. But the good thing is, over the last couple of years, I've noticed that the people who have stuck around from the new influx of people in industry have educated themselves and have become even more passionate than they were. And it's not just a job, it's a passion. Right. And now they look at people like us that have been around for a while and they want to know more about that history, and they want to partner with us on stuff because they know that we can help move the needle. And so that's the positive side. And because of social media and e-newsletters and podcasts and everything, we can access our audiences much quicker and efficiently with news that they need to know about, or how to vote for certain representatives because of grizzly bear management, or whatever. Right. There's just a lot of opportunity now that we can have at our fingertips that sometimes I'm guilty of longing for the good old days, but really, the good old days compared to now sucked. Yeah. When it comes to some of the conveniences that we're used to. I was standing in an art museum one time, and there's an old nostalgic farm picture of, the sun setting and the John Deere tractor in the background and a big whitetail buck back in the trees and a pheasant flushing. And the title of the painting was It's a Terry Redland painting out of South Dakota, and it's called The Good Old Days. And I'm very nostalgic. Obviously, we've kind of established that. And I was like, oh, man, the good old days. And this old guy standing next to me, and he kind of sighs and he laughs at me. And I'm like, what? I didn't know this guy. He said, everybody longs for the good old days except for those of us that lived it.
Isn't
he
that
said
true?
Every day was hard.
Yeah.
And now there's some things from the good old days that we are missing, like some of the morality that our country used to have is we don't have that to the level we used to have.
Yeah.
I think that's what people really mean by the good old days, but I don't want to haul my water. It's almost 50 below zero this morning when we all woke up this morning here in Powell, Wyoming. I'm very thankful that I'm not heating my house only with a fireplace.
Yeah. We're all
That'd
huddled
be a cold
in,
household.
Yeah, all huddled in one. I grew up that way. You all huddled in the living room.
Yeah.
You slept in the living room because that was the only place that, was above 50 degrees.
And somebody had stoked that fire constantly.
Yep.
And it's fun to think of living that way.
Yeah.
Until you actually have to live that way.
Now I just lay awake at night and pray that the heater kicks on. So when it kicks on, I fall asleep, and when it kicks off, I wake back up.
Yeah.
46 blows, no joke.
Yeah.
It was. It's still. Yeah. So that's the bad of it. But what's the good of it? What's the good of the industry?
I mean, we live in a passion-driven industry. We get to come to work every day, and even we lose sight of that here, where we have deadlines and we have budgets and we have obligations and travels and airline tickets and all the challenges that every business does, and you can get wrapped up in that. But the hunting industry is pretty dang cool, and nowhere else but for the most part America does something like this exist of this magnitude. And
we have the best icebreaker on the planet.
Yeah.
How did you do this fall?
Yeah, exactly. It's like the constant discussion we have. All the
Not
time.
a lot of industries can do something like that.
Well, and I told you when I first started here, my job was to look for hunting products and new companies and stuff online, at least when I started. And in most jobs, you're doing that at your office, and the boss walks by, you quickly click off so he doesn't know you're screwing around. And here it's like, I know I'm supposed to do that.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Like, did you find something cool today?
Yeah. And we, even in this office, we tend to focus on some of the clowns in the industry, and we get upset with what they're doing, and they paint us in a bad light and all that. But really, most of the people in the hunting industry are good people, and they're fun to work with. They're just as passionate as we are about what we do and what they do. And it's just cool. I mean, when you get, like you said, we get to help a business move the needle from a sales standpoint because they have good products, and we connect them to the best audience on the planet. And then at the same time, we're also hanging out with that portions of that audience at trade shows, sports shows, hunting camps, because we draw for hunt winners, and even the outfitters that we deal with too on some of those adventures. It's just fun to be around with people from a common thread.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, speaking of common threads, what is the red thread that ties you to hunting? Why do you hunt? If you didn't work here, would you hunt?
Oh my gosh, yeah. My wife always, people ask, how can he stand that he's gone all fall for his job? She said, he was gone all fall before. He's actually, his hunting licenses get paid for. So,
he doesn't have to buy all that gear.
Yeah. No, I don't. I mean, as long as I can remember, there was never a decision where I thought, I want to get into hunting. It's just who we are. It's just what we did as a family. And now I hunt way more than I did growing up because I couldn't afford to go out all the time, or,
vacations.
Yeah. But our whole year was revolved around opening weekend of deer season. So
why do you hunt?
I hunt because I think it's multifaceted. Largely is if this is a word association game, and I don't think, just boom, why do I hunt? It's the peace and being in the outdoors. And a close second is to witness the animals that live there when they're undisturbed and they don't know you're there. And that's part of the reason I hunt with a rifle and with a bow. I love it. I love both of them. But I love bow hunting because of that.
Because you're closer to it.
And they don't know you're there. And you can see them blinking, and you can hear them chewing, and you can hear their stomach churning, and you can hear, like, they don't even know I'm here. I can't explain it. It's just
So it's being part of nature, or at least getting to see and witness nature at its finest without disturbance.
Yep. When my dad convinced me to get into archery with him, he had bow hunted when he was younger and hadn't for a lot of years because of the time commitment and raising kids and all that stuff.
Right.
And when we got into high school, he convinced me to try bow hunting, and I honestly wasn't excited about it. I'm like, bow hunting? Why? We hunt with a rifle. I mean, that's what we do. Why a bow? Why? Mm-hmm. And he couldn't explain it either. He said, I really think you'll like it. I really do. I just ask you to try it. So I tried it. And the first evening that I was out bow hunting after shooting all summer and learning how to shoot a bow, I had
You had a lot of commitment for a try. Let's
yeah.
try this.
Yeah. I mean, and we were at the range all the time. And because he, stressed to me the importance of making an ethical shot and being confident with your equipment and all that. And I was like, wow, this shooting a bow is pretty fun. And I'd shot a toy bow and stuff off and on as a kid. And I'm like, well, I guess it would be fun to shoot a bow. And then when we finally went out hunting, I had 3 yearling mule deer the first day within 10 yards. And I'd never been that close to a live deer before. I've been that close to lots of dead deer with the rifle, rifle hunting. But, and I thought my heart was going to pound out of my chest. I mean, I'd never experienced anything like that. And I was hopelessly addicted after that. Yeah. And ever since then, that became, I wanted to do something outside wildlife related for my job. And that's what led me on the career path that I've been on.
So that's interesting, because knowing you, we've talked about this a ton, and knowing you and we've had lots of over the beer conversations when we travel and stuff. I would have put money on it that it was meat procurement. I would have put money that was in your top 3 because number one, you have 4 kids and a family, and I've heard you guys, you can take a bull elk. You did this fall. I didn't need meat, and so I gave you my bull elk, and you guys tore it down in an afternoon and had it packaged and froze before dinner.
Yeah, I've got a little factory at home.
So I know you guys do this a lot.
Yeah, and I do love that. I mean, one of my favorite parts of the hunt itself is after, somebody makes a successful shot, whether it's archery, rifle, whatever, and I'm with, and I usually request to break down the animal. I love that part of it. And it's up there as the top 3 or 4 reasons, obviously, why I like to hunt, but the peace and serenity is number 1. And that's part of the reason why I choose to live in rural Wyoming. That's part of the reason why I like going to the trade shows. You see me at SHOT Show. I like being at it. I love the energy, and I love seeing people we haven't seen in a year.
Yep.
But I every year, and I try to not do this or act this way, but I have to disappear for a while because I can't. I have enough, and I just need some time away.
Yeah. I always say when we get home from shot, I just want to go lock myself in a closet somewhere. No noise, nobody bugging you. Dark. Oh my gosh.
And so for hunting, that's why a lot of people say they like, as long as they have a chance at shooting a big old buck or bull, they don't care how many people are on the mountain or whatever. That ain't me. Yeah. I mean, I want to shoot a mature animal. That's obviously the goal. I've been a trophy hunter my whole life, selectively harvesting for the mature animals of the species. That's what we've done. Literally, my dad and my brother and sister and mother and everybody and I have done my whole life. But for me, the bigger than that is getting away from people. Because if I want to just hang out with people, I'll stay in town.
Yeah. So
that the biggest draw is the peace and serenity. And that's coming back to the Badlands. I think that's why I identify so much with, one of our most conservation-minded presidents in history is Theodore Roosevelt. And his famous quote that I like the most is, "Only he who has partaken thereof can appreciate the keen delight of hunting in lowly lands." And meaning, until you've done it, I can't explain it.
Right.
And that's why I love the Badlands, because there's most of the time not that many people out there, and part of that's from good management, where they restrict licenses. But anyway, it's the peace and serenity of it all.
So you're a pastor, You're running a church camp in the summer. You pastor. I wouldn't say you're not the full-time pastor at your church, but you guys share that duty until you find
Pretty
a full-time.
involved, yeah.
Yep, very involved in church. I'm going to ask you this question. I have two more questions for you. And this has been weighing a lot on my mind recently with the craziness in the media and the craziness, the stuff that's getting attention and the stuff that people are concerned about, it seems, in the media. And they're, of course, portraying every American that this way, or a portion of them. What do you think masculinity is important in our society, and why? One way or the other.
100% it's important. And the reason why is because God designed man and woman to complement one another. And some people that are religious fanatics that take, say, the Bible out of context, or any other religion for that matter, some people use that as a weapon because they completely take some verses out of context and make them say what they want them to say, that women are supposed to be less than or something, and that is not what the Bible teaches. We each have very important roles, and we complement that, and every relationship's slightly different, obviously. But civilizations have been built by strong men, and that doesn't mean chauvinistic jerks. That doesn't mean power tripping fools.
Doesn't mean abuse.
That doesn't mean abuse of power. That means strong men are not, I'm not just talking about physically strong that can keep everybody else in line or something like that. Strong men it's an integrity thing. It's a mental thing. It's a spiritual thing. And when a civilization understands that, even if it's not consciously, but it's just how it's ran, it thrives. And when it is taken away, which it has been very calculated for decades in this country, we see chaos. And what are we seeing today? And we are seeing chaos. And it's not on a good trajectory. And so we will get to a point, and I think, in my opinion, we're near it, that our country is going to have some very tough choices to make, and it's going to get uglier than it is now before we come back to grounding or to center or whatever you want to say. Or it may be too late. We won't know. And it may happen in our lifetimes, maybe afterwards. I don't know. But
that's true. Things are moving fast.
And I heard an old guy say this one time, a guy I know here locally. He said, the end times are like, and I'm not like a doomsday or prepper or nothing like that, but I'm also very observant, and I see things going on, and a student of history, like I mentioned. And he said that, the end times are likened to birth pains. And he said, he's pretty funny. He said, I've never given birth, obviously, but I've been there when my wife did. And I just know that when the birth pains got closer together and more extreme, something was happening. And we're seeing crazy events get closer together and more extreme. And not just every country or civilization goes through this. That's why there's the ebbs and flows of world powers. But I don't know that we've ever seen it to the global extent as we're seeing it now.
Yeah, to think 2 years ago, if you went anywhere on this planet, you had to wear a mask. Think through that.
Oh.
Never in history has that ever happened.
Yeah,
because we're so connected. On the planet.
Yeah.
Because we're so connected.
Yeah.
So connected.
Yeah. So I think, there's obviously something happening, and I'm not at all one to say, because, we know from what Jesus said that even, he doesn't know the day or the hour. Only the Father knows. And so it's foolish to speculate when that's going to come. It's smart and wise to be prepared for where you're headed in the next life, if you believe in that. So I know where I'm headed, and I can't wait to get there. Yeah. So,
last question, and then I'll open it up, and we can talk about whatever you want. But last question. I think about it, and I don't know if it's age or my kids getting older, my parents are getting older. I think a lot about death, and I think about, one of our friends says this all the time. When you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be going, "Gosh, I sure wish I would have worked more."
Yeah.
Right. What are you thinking about on your deathbed? what do you hope to have accomplished or be thinking about? What is your end goal?
My wife and I talk about this stuff a lot, and whether it's on your deathbed or what do you want written on your tombstone, or
Right.
And when I was younger, I probably had other things, more worldly goals, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, is just I told my wife, all I care about when I die is that people know that I was a man of integrity, that my yes meant yes and my no meant no. Doesn't mean you always agreed with me, but you knew where I stood on things, and that I gave 110% into raising my kids and my family, and then hopefully I'll have that opportunity with my grandkids too if that happens. So that's my goal, is just that I want my kids to be saying, man, we knew where Dad stood, and he always did his best to do the right thing.
Yep.
And everything else takes care of itself. I mean, when I was a teenager, honestly, I would have said what we're doing right now. My life goal is to work at Eastmans. And I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting here. You've heard the story where I asked my dad if he thought if they ever offered like summer positions or something. And my dad thought I was nuts. And at the time, he was probably right. It wasn't quite the company it's become now. And
for those of you that are interested in summer vacations, please send a resume to jobs at Eastmans.
Yeah.
Actually, the guy that's producing this, he was an intern.
That's right.
Started in high school.
Yeah, the guy standing behind the camera in helping us with the podcast. Luke is one of those guys that I'm embarrassed him because he's standing here in this room, but he's one of those guys that gives me hope for the future of what our country looks like, because there's a lot of people his age that I'm like, oh my word, what are we in store for? But
and we run into a lot of them actually in this industry. It seems to be something that they congregate to.
Yeah, I think so. And part of it is, I've always said this with hunting, and I used to do it when I was with Mueller Foundation. I did a lot of youth days and getting youth involved in the outdoors and teaching them how to shoot and wildlife conservation topics and all that. And one thing that I would always tell them, and a lot of them knew this, but there are life lessons that are learned, sometimes intentionally, sometimes accidentally, in the outdoors that are really hard to replicate in other places. And when you are intentionally taking the life of an animal and you're part of the whole system, and so are they, you have a different perspective on life. And you have respect for that animal. Now, I think one of the bad parts about our industry, I see people that deify these animals and, bawling like a baby after they shoot an elk. And I just, maybe I'm too old school, stubborn. I have a problem with that. But now sometimes you get a little emotional after a harvest because it reminds me of your dad and you wish he was there, or your grandpa, or, I get that. Yeah. But some of this has been really
10 days in a complete ass-kicking situation, and that was the culmination of it.
It's an adrenaline dump,
Yeah, exactly.
And so, to qualify my statement a little bit is that some of it's just social media drama dreamt up, right? That's the part I don't like. But when it's honest and real, that's good stuff.
I usually cry afterwards because I think about having to pack that animal out, and I just don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
AKA horses.
Yeah, horses, llamas, whatever.
El Pancho.
Yep.
So, well, I appreciate your time, and I hope you guys got to. It was interesting conversation. It's interesting to me, those last three questions. I plan on asking everybody because you and I know each other really, really well, and you shocked me on two of them. I would have not guessed that was going to be your answer. So I'm hoping to do this with every one of my guests, because I think it gives the audience a different perspective and things to think about in their own life, and things to focus on in their own life. And you're obviously the family man.
I am that. Yep. That's definitely one of my passions.
The family man that loves to have things, 68 Suburbans, 30-6s.
A family man that loves to submit my children to unnecessary suffering and travel accommodations.
And horrible dad jokes.
That's right.
Does any of your kids love dad jokes?
Well, Hunter does. Him and I, it's a daily, it's like 24/7. I've created a monster.
I can actually see your wife rolling her eyes right now.
Yeah. I can hear it.
Well, again, appreciate it. Thanks for joining us today. Hopefully we do more of these, and you get to know more of people around me and people in our industry and people that are just starting in our industry, people that you are interested in. Shoot me an email of people that you'd like me to sit down with and find out what they're going to die, what they're going to be thinking about when they're dying, as well as what they think our industry is as a whole.